As a father, my kids mean the world to me. I want to make their future and the future of all Nebraskans strong and vibrant, and that's why I'm running for legislature. I will support our public schools and fight for real property tax relief. I'll fight against any new taxes on groceries, prescription drugs, and youth sports. And unlike my opponent, I'm opposed to the complete and total ban and criminalization of abortion. I'm Michael Young, a business owner, a leader, and most importantly, a father. Thank you for your vote.
Hello, welcome to Moving People to Action, where we listen, learn, and then we act, we move. I want to thank you for tuning in terms of this episode on the power of the vote. We're going to focus on really not only in terms of just the importance of your vote, but talk a little bit about this fragile democracy that we're dealing with, and how do we find ourselves and our way back to some degree of rebuilding confidence in our system, in our election system. So I want to have join me right now my co-host for this evening, Mr. Raheem Sanders. Mr. Sanders, how you doing tonight?
All is well indeed, my good man. How about yourself?
Man, I'm blessed and highly favored. I appreciate you taking the time, but as we do normally, setting the tone and the pace, talk to me, brother, about our theme this evening, the power of the vote.
Power of the vote, yes, sir. So in today's time, we're talking about these elections that's coming up, and I think next week, 2022, there's a very powerful election going on across the country. There's positions up right now that determines the next, 2, 3, 4, and even longer years within our country, and what that means in terms of civilization. Before I get into all of that, I want to make sure that everybody understands, what the power of our vote is and why it's so important. First and foremost, many people don't know, many people do, but the United States is a representative democracy. That means that our government is elected by its citizens, and our citizens vote for their government officials. However, these officials are supposed to represent the citizens' ideas and concerns for government. And that brings us to right now, because in 2022, we just came over a pandemic. We just came over a whole lot of, political, challenges that's dealing with different types of elections across the country. And we're dealing with a lot of challenges as it relates to the citizens. And for those, again, who don't know, the way that the population is set up right now is very diverse. And as we look into the future, it's going to be getting more diverse. So what that means is that candidates within these general elections, they are in tight races because the minority voters has a really big impact on what the turnout is going to be. It's very critical to determine the balance of power within the next couple of years. The Latino and Latinas and the Black Americans are parts of very big groups whose votes will be pivotal this November, especially for Democrats to reassemble the past winning coalitions, and for Republicans to continue to take a lot of the control that they currently have in a lot of different states. So being able to gather the support from these Black and Latino groups of populations is going to be very decisive as we go through these November elections. This is all important because, right now, a lot of Republican candidates are really banking on, the margins that they're expecting from white voters, and Democrats really pretty much need the minority, the Black and Latino votes to win a lot of these tight races that we're seeing in the Senate and the governor's races across the country. But the whole big picture is as we look forward to how these elections are going to turn out, the most important part is focus on the minorities, again, those Black and Latino populations, because they have increased share in the voting pop groups. And whatever is going to happen on November 8th is going to be dictated to those populations. And this is very, very important because when we look in terms of the general elections in Nebraska, there's a whole lot of positions open right now that's going to be decided on November 8th. When you look at the ballot, there's some federal offices, U.S. representatives in Congress. There's a whole lot of state offices. We're talking about governor. We're talking about attorney general, secretary of state, state treasurer, the state auditor, senators, members of the state board of education. There's a whole lot open right now in the state legislation. And when we look at local offices, especially here in Omaha, we have the judge and county court position open. We have a whole lot of, college board of governor position opens. We have a lot of positions that uh, dictate the health, the wellness of our population for years to come. And last but not least, there's a lot of constitutional amendments and ballot initiatives that's going to be on the ballot this coming November 8th. I believe there's some legislation available about voter IDs. There's some legislation that we could vote on about Nebraska minimum wage. So all that to say, these upcoming elections are very important, not only for the country, but for Nebraska. And what I believe is going to come down to, again, is that minority vote, the Black and Latino voters who come out and represent their, the communities and their populations and voting for the people who are going to help put some positivity in terms of their lives and their, livelihood in the next couple of years. And last but not least, with all of these positions that are open for vote, these races, these general elections could have major consequences on issues as we move forward. Some big things
Major
that's been going
consequences.
on is the abortion. There's a lot going on, depending on how the vote turned out, what that looks like in Nebraska, as well as concealed carry of firearms. There's a lot of things going on
Yeah.
around that. But there's some things going on, again, on the state and local level that can be dictated in different directions based on how these elections go about. So,
Yeah.
all that to say, November 8th is going to be very, very important, not only for us, not only for the people that's running, but for the population, for the people of the United States, because how things turn out is really going to have an impact on the next 4 to maybe even 10 years.
Yeah, right on. I tell you, thank you so much, Raheem, for setting that tone and pace. And our panelists and folks, our thought leaders tonight, that's exactly what I want them to concentrate on. How important it is important, but really the question is, how do we wake up some of those, populations, minorities and Latinos, the Black vote, the Africans? How do we awaken that so they can really understand the serious of the impact of that vote? And so before we jump there, I have to pause for the calls. We got to pay some bills, right? So our sponsor tonight is candidate for Legislative District 18, Mr. Michael Young. Michael, welcome to Moving People to Action.
Oh, well, Tim and he, thanks for having me. Very excited to be here. And boy, he talked about a variety of things, and all politics are local. And, as being the top vote getter in LD 18, the new LD 18, and being a Democrat and a man of color, we set some history there, and that doesn't happen without a team. And the reason that, and I think that really happened is hard work pays off, and making sure that I do one thing that a lot of politicians don't: listen. What is important? What is important to them? Not only here's why I'm running, you get on a soapbox when you run. It really becomes out to by the end of this, we've got 12 days. The voters say, here's why I need you to run for me. And it really changed your point of view. I'm fighting for public education. I'm fighting for first responders. I'm fighting for, as a BIPOC father who has born and raised here in Omaha, Nebraska, and in raising my children here. And there's a variety of other reasons why I run, but
my learned experiences, which is a diplomatic way of saying how hard my childhood was and what I've gone through in life, when there's someone who is impacting public policy around poverty, housing, food scarcity, and things of those natures that I experienced as a child, my family experienced as a child, there needs to be people who are not only understanding what's going on, understand what those shoes feel like, and then also on the flip side of that, as a business owner and employer, I get to look at it from both ends. And that's the beauty of why I run for legislature, because it is a unicameral. It's the only unicameral. And it's about listening to the other side. And you'll always have your party rhetoric. You'll always have someone in disbelief, whether you're red or blue. For me, I say I'm about Nebraskans. I'm about my family and about moving our state forward. Now, all that's long to be said. I am fighting for a lot of things. One of them is reproductive health care. First of all, I'm a man. I'm not a mother. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not that subject matter expert in that regard. That's one of the biggest reasons why I run, to protect someone to be able to make that personal decision. Two, public education. There are 3 public school districts within my district: OPS, Elkhorn, and Bennington. And I'll tell you, they have a variety of needs. I go out and talk to voters, and I talk to folks just like this on platforms. I say LD18 is a small Nebraska. I have those, 3 school districts. I have agriculture. I have 3 of the largest lakes outside of Big Mac here. And I also have mass transit and people on rental assistance and $10 million houses and blacks, whites, nonpartisans, Republicans, Democrats, and everything in between. I love my district. I'm so thankful to have the opportunity to win their vote. Thank you for having me here today. And I'd love to answer any specific questions, because I'll tell you, as the only race that was reelected, let me talk to you about free and fair elections. And I know Brian will talk later as a Douglas County election commissioner. I literally watched him go through a recount and not one thing changed. And that was for one district. And he's doing it for an entire county. I have absolute faith, and I watched it firsthand. Douglas County elections are done correctly. Elections are done correctly here by the Secretary of State, and people need to trust that. And we just need to show them that their one vote, black, white, young, old, how they identify, does matter. And that is why I run.
Well, Mr. Young, talk to me a little bit about, in terms of when you think about voters and a lot of folks, what's on their mind. In this state, one of the things is crime. So really give us a high level in terms of just what's your thoughts about trying to, on the prevention side and intervention side of crime.
Yeah, so crime, it changes depending what you're in my district, right? Crime in Bennington might be a high-speed chase on a Hot Wheel or Power Wheel that I actually went through on a ride-along during Bennington days, to riding with the Omaha Police Department gang unit and seeing how they have to be first responders. And one of it is making sure they have the funding and the tools and the support in the legislative offices. That's one, because there's always going to be violent offenders. There's always going to be those troublemakers and knuckleheads, I'll call them.
So do you believe in you do the crime, you do the time?
I do. However, one of my 5-pillar platforms is justice reform. On average, the state, we spend roughly $200,000 per incarcerated person with their tenure of their time being in a prison system. Imagine if we invested 10 to 20% of that on the causes. Do they need a living wage? Do they need mental health care? Do we need to talk about the generational things that they have had happen before? We're always going to need police. We're always going to need prison systems for those violent offenders. That's treating the symptoms. I think it's time as a state we take a darn hard look at the causes of why are these people being forced to make those decisions. And sometimes it's just mental health, generational things, or they're just trying to survive. And I'll tell you, as a father, we've all seen the movies, John Q and, Denzel Washington's doing something cool. Well, if that was my family, what would I have to do if my kid had been hungry for 3-4 days? I'm not saying break the law, but I'm saying if we're creating public policy that does not allow people to break through the area and really accomplish an American dream, let alone just survive, we need to be honest with what's happening at the forefront. I want to focus a lot of legislation on being proactive, not reactive.
Right on. Hey, man, I thank you so much for stopping by and taking the time, and wish you the very best. And hopefully we'll have you come back and really talk about the implementation, because we're a country, we're a state that's driven by policies and laws, and that's why that power of the vote is so important, because it really dictates policies. And so any closing remarks?
As a biracial man, one thing that is really important to me is talking about equity. When I was a former vice chairman of Metro Community College, I had the ability to serve as DEI chair for community colleges across the country. And I would say, let's talk about the missing rural male, white male in Western Nebraska. And let's talk about the affluent, young Black girl who doesn't want to follow her father or mother's footsteps to an HBCU college. She wants to go in graphic design, and they want to go to Metro Community College or any other community college, and how they should have the same experience and access to resources. And it always catches everybody's eyes. And I said, did you talk about a poor white kid and a rich white kid? And I said, I absolutely did. Now that you understand what equity is really supposed to be like, those are the types of conversations we need to have. And that is really important to me, because rural poverty and urban poverty is no different. And as a state legislator, even if you don't vote for me, I'm still going to fight for you. And I think a lot of people need to understand that it's time to get rid of that partisan left, right, wherever you want to be. Let's meet in the middle, have some respectful discourse, and move the needle forward.
Right on, right on. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you again taking the time.
I thank you all for having me.
Father, my kids mean the world to me. I want to make their future and the future of all Nebraskans strong and vibrant, and that's why I'm running for legislature. I will support our public schools and fight for real property tax relief. I'll fight against any new taxes on groceries, prescription drugs, and youth sports. And unlike my opponent, I'm opposed to the complete and total ban and criminalization of abortion. I'm Michael Young, a business owner, a leader, and most importantly, a father. Thank you for your vote.